Thanks everybody for joining today's Stay Connected webinar. I'm Kim Larson with the 21st Century Community Learning Center program, and I'm happy to represent our Get Connected Conference Planning Committee in welcoming you. Today, we are excited to learn about beginning a board game club by the expert, Brian Welch with NDE. I'll let Brian introduce himself, and Brian, you can go ahead and take it away.
Hi. For those of you who haven't met me yet, my name is Brian Welch. I started at NDE almost a year ago, assisting with Kim and Jan. But I mean, I applied for the job because I love after school. I'm an English teacher of 9 years, and I've been involved in clubs after school, during lunch, before school, even before I started teaching, for the 2 years before I was a para and I was finishing my degree. And so I've been involved with after school for a long, long time. I'm fortunate enough that NDE allows us to flex our hours to volunteer and spend time and work with schools for different reasons. And so I have the pleasure to still be able to do clubs at my children's school. So I have lots of bias towards that specific school, mainly because my kids go there. It's nothing to do with the school itself. It's because my kids are there. So sorry that I can't do it at every single school. Mainly time is an issue. And like I said, I'm biased. My children go there, and I have some pictures of them here. So I've been able all this past year to do clubs at the school, and I actually ran a board game club at Calvert Elementary in Lincoln, Nebraska. From January through mid-March was when we did the board game club, and so it was quite great. So I'm going to jump in and get going with this. So to be clear, when we're talking about board games, there's some terminology in the industry of board games that can get a little confusing. For example, tabletop game is any game that can be played on a flat surface, such as a table, or, that's what tabletop, but you could play them on the floor too. A card game is a game that uses a deck of cards without boards, and a board game is a game that has a plain board in addition to any other components. For the ease of discussion, I'm just going to use the term board game to refer to all of them. So for example, Uno is a card game, but I'll talk about it in the board game category and so on and so forth. It just makes it easier to discuss instead of having to get nitty gritty on certain things, unless we need to get nitty gritty. I should also say I'm very okay with being interrupted. 9 years as a middle school teacher will do that, and having 4 children under the age of 11 as well. So feel free to jump in if you have questions, or put your questions in the chat, and we'll go from there. All right. So why board games? First off, these are pictures from that board game club that we had, that we finished a few months ago. The 2 girls on the far left are mine. This was a 4th and 5th grade club, for those who are curious. However, my 1st grader, Clara, in the front, who has the birthmark on her forehead, she joined, and she actually did a great job teaching all of these games to these 4th and 5th graders. She was one of my assistant teachers. I would have myself and my oldest and my youngest be kind of like the game leaders at these different stations, because we had small groups. And so all the games I'm talking about are, one, games that are easy enough for a 1st grader, my daughter, to understand and help teach. Granted, she has me as a father and we play them a lot, but still, as well as things that are still very interesting. In that middle picture, Lacey, she's the back left in the middle picture. She was an assistant. She's a college student that was volunteering at the school and was helping out. So they're games that are both easy to learn and fun to play. Personally, I don't really like the game Uno. I find it boring. Doesn't mean it's not a good game. I just don't enjoy it. And so all these games are easy that I'm going to talk about today are easy to learn games that are also interesting for all age levels. But why board games? Face-to-face social interactions. We just have fun, goofy times. For example, with this club, we got that middle picture with people using the pieces and just being silly with the pieces, having them on their face and pretending. From another game that we were playing called Sushi Go, one student, there's a pudding card in this game, and he collected all of the puddings he possibly can, and that became just an inside joke from going forward. We talk about pudding, and he didn't win. It was a very bad strategy in the game, but that wasn't the point. The point was the fun, the silliness, and all that. And it was just so fun to talk about pudding for like weeks afterwards. There's also lots of critical thinking. The game you see in the pictures is very geometric shape. It's a very geometric game. It's called Block It. And there's lots of, lots of bangings. I have the board games, right? There's lots of geometric thinking. So there's critical thinking that's math-based. Some of the other games, the favorite game of everybody was Sparkle Kitty, that is very reading heavy. And so there's lots of good reasons to do board games. So the problem is, how do you choose? The picture there is actually behind me. This is not a background. These are my games. And, you know, there's so many. I alone own around 125. That doesn't even scratch the surface on the amount of games available in the world. There's over 150,000 different board games that you could play or buy, which means that there are great ones and there's also awful ones. Some games, for example, I would never do with students. Some of these games up here are very complicated. They're very long and I love them, but I would never do them with students unless they were like higher middle school or high school, and I knew that the kids were dedicated and really were into games, right? And so the question is, how do you choose when you have all these games? The two things that I think are most important are determine the ability level of the children or the students, the participants, and the effort level that they're willing to put in. And then you need to play some games, right? And I mean, as the leader before bringing them to the students, one of the worst ways to introduce a game to a group is to be like, all right, I've never played this game. Let's learn it together. That's actually pretty awful, unless everyone goes in knowing that that's how what's going to happen, right? You want to have played the game first, understand the game, or whoever the club leader is. You want to know the game to some degree so that it's one smoother and easier. If you sit down and you spend 10 minutes reading rules, you're going to lose all the kids right away, right? You need to get them touching the pieces, interacting with the pieces, and playing the game within 5 minutes generally, or you've lost them. Now, that depends on effort level. Sometimes kids who really want to dedicate time, they're okay with that because they know going in that that's what they expect, but you need to have that understanding. So to help determine ability level and effort level, I have a couple of rules that I use, right? And I categorize games into 4 general categories. And these descriptors are vague intentionally because it depends on the grade level and the effort level of the children that you're doing it with. So for example, there are some games that have little to no reading and very basic rules. Uno is a great example of this. All you have to read in Uno is the numbers. Technically, you have to read the color of the card. You have to read the color of the card as well. And so they're reading 2 things. One numerical symbol, maybe reverse or skip, and they're reading the color, right? That is reading. That is a form of reading, is identifying the color on the card. So it's very, very little reading and it's very basic rules. You have to match the number or the color of the card already played. Get rid of your cards, right? Very, very basic. Now, there are some games that have some reading, but still have very basic rules. For example, this game, Sparkle Kitty, is very similar to Uno. It uses the exact same concept of you have to match the color, or in this case, symbol, hearts, or crowns or diamonds, to the card already there. But instead of numbers, there are words on each card, right? And so there is reading involved, and it's more complex reading because they're words, and some of them are interesting words that you wouldn't see a lot or use a lot. Pixie, whisker, right? This is my favorite substitute for Uno. I think Uno, because I have this game, I'm never going to play Uno again because Sparkle Kitty is amazing. But it's a little more reading, It's a little more complex. The wild cards have more complicated actions than Uno. Then you can get into games that have moderate reading and somewhat complex rule. An example of that might be something like Codenames, right? This one has some more complex rules. You have to do some guessing and some critical thinking with your teammate to identify which secret words are your team's words. You have a clue giver that has to identify and give you clues to help you identify your rules, but they have to follow very specific guidelines on how to do it. So it's not the most complex out of all the rules, but it has fairly complex rules, and it has some reading involved because there's lots of word play involved in this. You have to read and think about how words interact. And then some of the other, another game might be complex reading and complex rules. I did not use any of these types of games with my student group. One would be, for example, this game, Yeto. This has very complex rules. It takes about 2 hours to play, maybe an hour and a half if you're playing quickly, 2.5 if you're playing slowly. And there's lots and lots and lots of reading. There's lots of symbols, because something that people forget sometimes, is that symbol identification is reading too, not just words. And in board games, symbol identification, color identification, all of that is a form of reading where our brain has to look at a symbol, interpret it, and make meaning out of it. That's the definition of reading. And so we read the symbols, we read the words, and we read colors, for example. So all of these are things to take in mind. Now, this is my general guideline for the types of games that I would use at these different levels, early elementary to high school. However, I've played very simple, little to no reading games with basic rules with my middle schoolers when I was in the classroom as an English teacher, right? It just depends on the purpose, how much time you're willing to spend, and the effort level. If someone isn't willing to spend the time to learn the very, very complex games like Yeto that I pulled off the shelf, there's no reason, even if they can, there's no reason to teach it to them. They won't have fun. It'll be an awful experience, and that's not the point. The point of any game is to have fun. I call this my Dave Welch rule. That's my father. He's a very, very intelligent man. And he retired recently, but for his job, he read very complicated legal documents to advise technology companies on how to interact with another. Really complicated, right? Like super complicated. He's very intelligent. But if I couldn't explain a game to him in 2 minutes or so, he was done. He didn't want to. He could play those games, but it wasn't enjoyable to him. That's not what he was looking for. And so that's something that we need to keep in mind as well. Even if someone can play a complicated game, is that what they want to do? And so some of it is how much effort we're willing to put in, the time amount we want to put in or time we have, and stuff like that. If you only have an hour club, you can't play Yeto with those kids, right? You don't have the time. It takes way too long. You need to find something shorter. And maybe that's all they want to do is play a couple short games and have lots of discussion. The simpler games are better for lots of just off-topic conversation. The more complicated games, if you have lots of off-topic conversation, you can double or triple how long it takes to play the game, which can be really unenjoyable for some people. So I say that with love. I really do love my father. And actually, this has helped me so much explaining games to other people. It doesn't matter if you're very, very intelligent. If you don't want to play that type of game, it's a waste of everybody's time and money if you're spending money on that. So, something I want to be clear about, I'm not talking about in this Stay Connected about hobby games. And what I mean by that is very significant amount of time and money that are essentially hobbies on role-playing games like Dungeons and Dragons, miniature war games where you paint miniatures and you have kind of like Risk, really expanded though, or trading card games like Magic the Gathering or Pokemon. Those are better suited to their own club with someone who knows that game well or is willing to learn it. Because it's very complicated. There's lots and lots of pieces. Even though a game of Pokemon, the card game could take maybe 20 to 30 minutes, maybe less, maybe more. Even though you can play that in a club setting, and they only have their decks, there's thousands and thousands of cards that could be used, and there's complex interactions involved. And so it's better suited to a specific club that someone knows that game well. I've run all of these kinds of clubs because I'm a super nerd, if you can't tell, right? But they're dedicated clubs for that purpose, right? It's not a general board game club and, oh, this week we're doing Magic the Gathering. No, it's generally those kids, they're dedicated into it. It's a hobby for them, and they want to play Magic every single week. Maybe different kinds of Magic, because you can, or different kinds of Pokemon, ways to play the game, but it's dedicated. So that's not what we're talking about. Those are great too. And if you want to talk about those, let me know. We can talk later. You can email me. My email will be at the end of the thing if you have questions about starting those up. All right. So I do have some handouts in the chat, and I just put them there. And these are handouts that are great. I did not attach any of the quick play guides. If you have questions about those, I can send them to you. They are simplified board game rules that fit on a page. For example, taking the game Blockus and typing it up onto one page so it's easier to read. I found that even with adults, it's less intimidating to look at that one page simplified bulleted list than the rule document that they put in the box. And people are more willing. I do have those. If you're interested, let me know. But these other handouts, there's one running a board game club. This is tips on different club sessions, how you can run a session. There are examples about, for example, if you wanted to do a tournament on a game, if you wanted to run a Blockus tournament, it has details talking about how you could run a tournament for a specific game, and you could have a championship, right, with brackets and everything. It also talks about ideas about maybe letting students lead, have them bring their favorite board game to teach, right? Board games of the week, which is the structure I used for my elementary school club a few months ago. I had a board game a week, and we did one board game a week. We learned it, we played it. We generally played about two rounds. And we would play, we'd rotate who's in what group so everybody can play with different people. In that handout, it also talks about just classroom management ideas and tips for a board game club specifically, things that you need to pay attention to. Oh, thank you for letting me know that access was not there. I can adjust that. And let's see, I could probably adjust that now. No, I can't because I'm screen sharing. So I can adjust that afterwards. These links will be the correct links to use. Sorry about that, Lisa. Thank you for saying that. These are the correct links. I will change the sharing permissions on those after this, and just save the link and then close out and reopen it afterwards. Give me like 10 minutes after we're done, and it'll be shared. So sorry about that. But that first one, it has classroom management tips. For example, when we were playing this game, Lacey and I realized that we had some cheaters. In this game, Blockus, the one I've held up a couple times, you take turns putting one piece on the board at a time, following rules, and you have get as many pieces on the board as you can. And we had some kids that were sneaking extra pieces on the board when it wasn't their turn, or they'd put two on the board. And so we had some cheaters. And we talked to them about it, obviously. But some of the discussion about how to watch out for that, how to address that, some of those tips are in that handout. And along with other things about just, for example, monitoring and paying attention with that. The other two links are suggestions for if you want to start a board game library, some starter suggestions, as well as if you want to expand your board game library. All of these, Kate Sidek, who works with Lincoln CLC, and I and someone else I work with a nonprofit, on the side, we kind of compiled these together. So thank you to Kate from Lincoln CLC and Riley Haug, who is a middle school science teacher in, oh, I forget what city he lives in, but still. So and these are really good. Now, I do suggest that if you're playing Sorry, Uno, Monopoly with your kids, those games are great, especially if you're having fun. But I promise there are much better games out there. I personally don't really like any of those games. I think they're not well made. This is personal opinion, me being a board game snob a little bit here, so you can ignore some of this snobbery. But I don't think they're good, well-made games. They're games that are faster, more interactive, have a lot more critical thinking possibilities. For example, I mentioned Uno. Sparkle Kitty is functionally plays the same way as Uno, but it's much better because there's lots more reading. There's a silliness aspect with the words added in, because you can have you have 2 piles and you can have Sparkle Bear, and it's just kind of silly and fun, so there's a silliness aspect, and there's 2 piles you can play on. So it's less likely that students don't have a card and they just have to draw and pass their turn, right? And there's a lot more, it's a lot sillier and funner than Uno, but it's pretty much the exact same rules as Uno. And so at this point, with 130, 150,000 different board games out in existence, there's better games. My gripe with Sorry and Uno is that they're track style games where you move your piece along a track. Those types of games are a little outdated with the board game mechanics. And there are so many better games that have more critical thinking. So in the for what it's worth category. I have babbled a lot. We have, let's see what else. Okay, so that's kind of my shtick. And once again, if you are enjoying and your kids are enjoying Sorry, Monopoly, Uno, those kinds of games, please keep playing them. Like, the point is to have fun. I hate them personally, but that's just me. That doesn't mean that they're not good. If you're having fun, they're good. They're doing their job, right? I'm just saying there's more out there that you can explore. And if you would like suggestions on, for example, replacements of those types of games, I have plenty of them. Sparkle Kitty is the best one for Uno. It's really cheap, made by Breaking Games, right? And it's great. It's really fun. It's really silly. Out of all of the games we played, that was the popular from all of the students in the elementary school club we had. And it's my children's personal favorite. I like it. I think it's much better than Uno. So yeah, I don't have anything else. Oh, Lisa, wow. Well, let me stop sharing and I can fix that.
Yeah, and we can post all these links along with the recording once the recording's available. So you'll have them. So Brian, you can just send them after.
And that's fine. I can also find them very quickly now, while we see if anyone else has any suggestions or questions, I should say, not suggestions.
Brian, all I have to say is this Stay Connected has taught me so much in 25 minutes, like my brain. Oh, thank you for this. This is great stuff. Great stuff.
Well, I do really enjoy board games. Try that tips document, Lisa, and let me know if it's working or not. And then oh no, that was the wrong one. Sorry, ignore that. Ignore that one. Sorry. Anyone think there we go. That's the first one. So I fix and then expanding. So here we go. Get link, copy link. Here's the tips document, the correct one.
Great,
the second
thank you.
one. And then the expanding the board game library, you said that link wasn't working as well. It was the wrong link. It was a previous one. Oh, and that's restricted too. Oh, okay. Good thing I checked. And then here's the expanding the board game library. I thought I had checked it beforehand. So thank you for double checking that, Lisa. Yeah.
Deb, I'm glad to see you're on. I know Deb Romanik's a huge board game fanatic also. So, and the benefits to learning math in Deb's situation.
kids love to play games. We have tons of games, so new games are always good. So this is awesome. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're good. Actually, that makes me think of another one. This is Quirkle. Speaking of math and new games that are great, Quirkle is a great one. This is pattern recognition for math, right? Pattern and shape recognition. And it's really good critical thinking. There was an NDE employee I was speaking with, I don't know, 3-4 months ago at lunch. I'm like, hey, you're a board game nerd. What are some good board? And like, I take that as a compliment. So I love that term. So what's a good game? And I recommended this. And then just like 2 weeks ago, like, hey, we have a question about the rules on that because we've been playing it so much and we love it. And she was talking with her adult about her adult kids that she plays it with, and they go hardcore mean, you know, like cutthroat, which I love playing that way too, just not with my children, you know? And so Quirkle's a great one if you like math and shape. Very, very easy to learn. Oh, Lisa, you know it? Yeah, it's a good one. So I don't have anything else. I'm just babbling.
Any
I
other?
just wanted to let you know, Brian, I'm looking at this, as you know, I'm retiring. I'm looking at this as, because we're reconfiguring the toy room. I'm trying to get more games that are more appropriate for my older ones. This has been so helpful. Thank you so much. This is just great stuff.
Well,
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Feel free to email me independently because this is my kid area of my library.
Oh, perfect.
So
Excellent.
like
Excellent.
I got well, these are puzzles, but like these two shelves above and below the puzzles are kid friendly, kid easy ones. So I still enjoy playing them. So
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you.
I have to admit, I took a screenshot so I could look at what's on there.
I can send you my board game library list.
That would be awesome.
Would you do that, Brian? Could you do that for
Yes.
us?
That's
Sorry,
on my
look at
personal
you guys are giving him
email.
homework. This is awesome.
No, that's fine.
That would be great.
I recently made an Excel sheet of everything that's on my shelves, right? But that's on my personal email and my personal drive. I don't think I've shared it with my work. So I can share it with my work and then I'll give it to Kim to share out. So
Great. That'd be great. Thank you.
yeah. And I have a
That's
huge variety
fantastic.
of things. So like I personally love really heavy 2-3 hour games, but I have lots and lots that aren't because of my children and my father, right? But there's still games that I really like strategically. They're not boring to me, but they're easy to learn, right? So yeah.
Great.
Oh, here's my best suggestion if you like Sorry, is Slide Blast. It's a tile placement game where you are moving your person down a water slide. And so it's still kind of a track game where you're moving along a path, but you're placing tiles strategically to get your person the farthest. And so it's kind of like Sorry, where you're trying to move a piece, right? But it's not the track style game where it's just, well, I randomly got a 3. Oh, I guess, sorry, you got all the 10s and 11s, I lose, right? And so there is strategy, but you're still moving it. And this can play up to 6 people, and it's really fun. It's really fun. So yeah. Anyway, I just keep jumping in with new things. I need to be done. I'm done.
Brian, that was fantastic. We just love hearing about your games and your enthusiasm for that and willingness to share your expertise with all of us. So thank you so much. This has been fun. Makes me want to buy some games and find some folks who want to play. But board game clubs after school or summer programs, what a great idea for kids for so many reasons. Thank you. So our next session is May 4th. We have Jennifer Jones from Beyond School Bells, who is going to walk us through their new college and career ready toolkit that they have available. And then May 18th is Jackie Steffen with UNL Extension, sharing resources. The session is called Discover and Design. So we're really looking forward to both of those. So thanks to all of you for joining. This has been a lot of fun today.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Bye.
Thanks, Brian.